Hi everybody, I hope you're doing well. Merry Christmas. We're getting so close, 6 days away, which means we have 6 whiskeys left, and I am very excited because every whiskey left on this list, for me, is Christmassy in its own way. It has something about it that just reminds me of Christmas or just feels really fitting for, winter time and the holidays. And I did kind of want to end load this list with things that are a bit more Christmassy, because it's hard to get a list of 24 whiskeys that are all Christmassy and all within a budget that people are willing to pay. But these last 6 days I'm really excited about. So let's get started. For today, we're going to be drinking Naked Grouse blended malt Scotch whiskey. If we're using whiskeys on this list, the Advent calendar, as kind of a reference point, then I'd say Naked Grouse is the most similar to the Monkey Shoulder and the Balvenie Doublewood, almost like a cross between them, because like the Monkey Shoulder, this is a blended malt whiskey. It's Scotch, but it's not single malt because it's not all from one distillery. So this company, they have sourced different single malts from different distilleries all across Scotland, so single malt scotches, blended them together, and they've matured them in what they call naked first fill sherry casks. So what I neglected to mention during the Balvenie tasting is what a sherried scotch is. And a sherried scotch is a scotch that's distilled and aged for at least part of its aging process in a barrel that at one point held sherry for aging or was seasoned with sherry. You can get a barrel that aged sherry, so that was used to hold sherry while sherry aged, and you can get that directly from folks who make sherry, or you can get barrels that you can either have a company do this, or the distillers themselves can put sherry in it for a while to season that wood with the sherry flavor. You're going to get different opinions as to whether it makes a huge difference one way or the other. I think the general consensus is that you want those barrels that were actually used to age sherry, but they're harder to get. I mean, some of those barrels are used for decades and decades, or even 100 years or more, so they can get pretty expensive, and there's not a lot of them. Anyway, we don't know which one Naked Grouse uses. And, apart from and first fill sherry casks, what that means, that's why they call it Naked Grouse. So what that means is that these barrels that were either used to age sherry in the past or were seasoned with sherry, first fill means that after the sherry leaves it, the scotch that's in this bottle was the first whiskey that was put into that sherry cask after the sherry left it. It was the first fill in that sherry cask. So it was a naked first fill sherry cask. And they got kind of cute with that, with the marketing, and didn't put any label on this. It's just a glass bottle, which is, I don't know, I kind of like it. Anyway, let's fill her up, see what we think. 43% ABV, extra matured in those naked first fill sherry casks. So what that means is that, we already know that this is a blended malt scotch, so they've gotten the scotch from a bunch of other distilleries, put it together, and then they put it in these first fill sherry casks. What we don't know for sure is that the scotches that they sourced, we don't know whether those were sherried already, whether they were put into any sherried berries. At least we can't say for certain. But they almost certainly were not. This bottle is a little over $30, maybe even 40. I think you can get it for under 40. It's a little bit more expensive than the Monkey Shoulder, but only by a few bucks. And in order to maintain that sort of price point, I can't imagine that there's any Scotch in here that was aged in a ex-sherry cask in the original by the original distiller, and then sold to the folks who put all the whiskey in this bottle after aging it in more sherry casks. No way. I mean, that would have increased the cost way too much. So my guess is this is just a bunch of fairly standard, not too pungent or strong Scotch. I don't think any of it's peated, most likely. That was then for the first time put into sherry casks after they brought it over from the other folks. And again, based on the price, my guess would be that those casks are sherry seasoned, not actually used to age sherry from sherry producers, but I don't really know. I could be wrong about that. Let's give it a twirl, give it a nose, give it a taste. You smell the malt and you smell a little bit of like dinginess that I would associate with sherry, which sounds horrible, and it's not. It's like this musty, dingy, like we talked about how the Balvenie was more like the Doublewood. It had like dry fruit notes to it, at least for me, like dried plums, maybe figs, raisins, craisins, whatever. This is more like there's a little bit of that, but this leans more into a funk that you get with sherried scotches a lot, which people call just like dusty. It is a pretty common term, like dank. It's just got some dankness to it. And I like the dankness, and what I like is that maltiness kind of fades away. At least it has for me so far as I've been smelling this more. Because the first time I took a whiff of it, it smelled to me like, oh, this was cheap Scotch put in sherry casks, which I was not too excited about, a little disappointed, because I've heard some good things about this being a great value, but I've never had it before. But now that sherry's coming through more, I'm liking it a lot more. I'm excited to give it a taste now. I like that. Initially, for me, was sweeter on the front palate, more fruit forward, like, I don't know, some kind of red fruit, maybe like berries almost. On the back palate and the finish, it develops into this like kind of jumping back and forth between like some maltiness, like that malted barley, and then into the more dingy side of the sherry, because that fruit forward flavor that we're getting at first, that's probably almost certainly from the sherry, but then it just develops into a not completely, but a different flavor profile from that sherried. From the sherry cask, which is pretty cool, and a little bit more. It's the first taste. We'll see if it sticks, but more complex than I was expecting from a sub $40 bottle of Scotch. It sticks through. I like this. Monkey Shoulder has been a mainstay of mine as like a cheap shelfer, like something you can always afford to have on the shelf that is good, but that you're not going to feel bad if you. If you're drinking some, not every night, but pretty regularly, or if you do weird stuff to it. You could do what you want to it, right? Like you could mix seltzer water in it, you could put ice in it, have it over water, mix it, even though I don't know a lot of like good Scotch cocktails, but you don't feel bad about it. Like I wouldn't put seltzer water in like, a Balvenie or, some of the bourbons that we've had, because, what are you doing? But you can do that with like a $30 bottle. And what I like about this is I didn't think I would ever find a sherried Scotch that I can put in that same sort of category. Something that's good to sip on its own, but cheap enough that you don't mind, fucking around with it a little bit. But that's this bottle. It's pretty good. I like it a lot. I hope you do too. I don't have a ton of like direct recommendations from this bottle, just because it is kind of in its own class. So I guess all I'm going to say on this one is I hope you're enjoying it as much as I do. I hope you're feeling a little bit of the Christmas spirit as you're getting a little buzz, but also from what this bottle brings, because I definitely am, and I'm really excited to go through the next few days with you and get closer to Christmas and enjoy these whiskeys that are really evocative of that sense and that spirit. So cheers, and I'll see you tomorrow.